Hello and welcome to another episode of the Footy Form Guide podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Walley, joined as always by my good mate, Harro. How are you, mate?
Yeah, going well, Wally, and just take the punting hat off for a second. Saturday night was something else, wasn't it? Not been a season, or actually it hasn't been a decade, that as a Blues fan you can really just sit back and relax and enjoy it. But they put on an absolute show, so that was definitely the highlight of the footy for me from the weekend.
Mate, it was an absolute cracker. It was funny because I actually had a house full of people over, and there was a Carlton family and a Brisbane family amongst it. It was a great night for half the room, but it was good fun watching, and it was thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, no, it was that was a beauty. So that made the weekend very enjoyable. Just as a fan, and yeah, haven't been able to enjoy the footy as a fan for a fair while. So it's great.
Yeah, very good, mate. Well, we'll get stuck straight into it. Let's talk about the good and the bad on the punt. What were our highlights for the weekend?
Yeah, so we obviously the best bet was a good one for us on the weekend, Wally. That got up. And that was sort of maybe the one lucky bit of luck we had for the weekend, because obviously we needed the D's to win by 6 points or more. They won by 9. They actually lost unexpected scoring. So it's always welcome when you get one sort of go your way, mate. And that was a good one. Outside of that, we had the over total points in the Blues versus Lions, which was a very easy watch. What else did we have? Just looking through it here, Wally. We had Freo to beat the line against the Doggies. That one worked out really nicely for us as well. There was a bunch of player stuff which I won't go into. They kind of split themselves down the middle in the end. Outside of that, mate, they're the main highlights for us.
Lowlights? What was
Low
any
lights.
heartbreak?
We had the Eagles to beat Richmond, mate, and they've kicked 9 goals, 19. So that was a little bit of a bugger for us, that one, mate. And you look at it and you go, what can you do? Side comes out and kicks 9-19. Not only did that happen, but Richmond probably could kick maybe 2 goal of the year nominees early as well. So I felt like we were a little bit stiff there. We also had Port to beat the Giants. That one didn't go our way either, mate. And Port just were no good, unfortunately. So they're our lowlights that stick out for me over the weekend anyway.
Yeah, very true. I was at that game on Sunday at the G, and I'll tell you, it was weird. Very unusual at the G. There was a lot of wind swirling around. The ball was moving around a lot, and I just couldn't believe it. You don't usually see that at the G, but
Yeah.
I mean that I think early there was a little bit of that kicking to the punt road end. There was a few misses because of that early, but I think you adjusted that pretty quickly. I don't think we can blame that for the 9-19, but it was an interesting one. All right, mate, we're going to get stuck into the selection table here. That's back this week because Hall of Fame is taking a rest this week. We had no noms last week. And I'll tell you what, if we don't have one this week, I have another retrospective one, and it's not a Western Bulldogs player this time. So we'll see how this week goes. Couple of things on the in column for me. A genuine Coleman medal race. And we have a bona fide Coleman medal race. We've got Charlie Curnow out on 57. He's 4 ahead. And then you've just got this peloton behind him of Ben King, Gunston, Nick Watson. I'll tell you what, unless you just mindlessly hate Hawthorn and short people, you'd be thinking Nick Watson winning it would actually be really cool. And that's if you don't, you don't have to, but it just would be a really, really cool thing. And then you've got Amos and Tracy both there as well, and Logan Morris a little bit further down. But it's actually a genuine race. I think Charlie, just with the run home that Sydney have and the fact he's got that, and you'd think they haven't worried about this all year, but there would be a level of trying to feed him when they get into winning position in games, just to try and get him that medal, because he did cop criticism in the first half of the season. So I think that'd be important. I think that, it's hard for the Wiz. I reckon the Wiz has probably got to kick about 15 goals to win it in 3 games of footy, and one of those is against Brisbane, another one's against Collingwood. It's not easy.
It sets up
But yeah,
for a brilliant last afternoon of footy on Sunday, August 23, doesn't it? Because Charlie plays at 3:20, and then the Hawthorn game against West Coast at 7:20. So, if there's a Hawthorn player within reach,
that'll
uh,
be
that could be
great
good for
betting
the
game.
watch.
That will
Yeah.
be great. Like if Gunston, for example, needs 7, go and find 7+ because and a 5 and 6, because if he doesn't get there, he'll only fall short by a bit. And I don't think West Coast is really going to bother about just trying to do the Clarkson players behind the ball on Fev in 08. I think it'll be more of like just trying to put in a decent performance for their last game in front of their fans. I don't think so. I think that you could be. Yeah, it could be a good betting proposition, that one,
Yeah.
even if they don't get there, just if they try and get there and they fall short. Because you would think by that last game, one of those Hawthorn blokes should be within sort of 7 or 8 of Curnow. So
You're
I'm
also,
not
you're
saying they'll
also
get
going to
there.
get
Yeah.
You're also going to get the opportunity to back Curnow that day, because he's going to go into that game not knowing how many he needs, and especially if it's a dead rubber. So you could even be having yourself a little multi of like Curnow 6, Gunston 6, that sort of thing. Could be pretty good fun.
What do the Hawks do if both Gunners and the Wizard are 5 behind? Surely they try and kick 6 and just draw it.
That would be
6
fun.
apiece. Anyway, a lot to look forward to. So I'm looking forward to that. And that leads me to my next in. I reckon I was only critical for a little bit of this, and I've said this already that I like this now. I was only critical because I'm like, this is a distraction by the AFL, and 100% it was. That's what they do. They muck up and then they try and distract us, and then they make more errors in the process. But the wildcard round now has done what the original hope was, which was it's extended the season somewhat. It is now exciting. There is a prospect of Carlton Collingwood playing instead of having a bye weekend at the MCG in front of what will probably be 90,000 people. That is genuinely a chance to happen now. There is, like, this Sunday night now, St Kilda Carlton is huge. It's like a mini final into the other mini final. That if Carlton win, it gets really hard for St Kilda. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is if St Kilda wins, they're both still in it. Like, there is a lot of different angles here. And the other thing that's made it interesting is a little bit of the stumbles from the top 4 with Brisbane, with Adelaide, Melbourne, Geelong, all teams losing games that maybe we thought they wouldn't. Now, any one of those 4 teams could fall into the wild card slot, that 7 slot. And one of them's going to. It's just, shit, who would have thought? If Brisbane lose to Hawthorn this week, it could be Brisbane. Because the others have favourable draws. So the wild card's getting us going. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah.
But Harro, when there's ins at the selection table, there has to be outs. And I've got a couple out. So the first one here, and this is more of a personal one, but I think that other clubs could relate to this. Now, I understand the financial requirement for clubs to, go and get sponsors and make money. And I get that. But also, as a fan, you're allowed to just care about your team and their footy and all the things that go along with that. And I don't think Hawthorn is worried. I don't think we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Hawthorn are already talking now and looking at options, including Wellington, Cairns, Canberra, and other areas for where they will move games to and sell games to after the Tassie deal's done. Harold, I just want more games in Melbourne. I just want to watch more of my team play in Melbourne. The Tassie thing was fun for a while. I went down a number of times. I loved going down to Tassie. It was all good. The only thing with the Tassie thing is, I don't know, this year's looked a little different. I think when it's coming to an end, I think it's been a little bit more of a, we've got to go down to Tassie. We've got to play this game down there. We've got to come back. We're not at the G. I don't know, mate. We've had 2 games in a row now. Like, North were actually all right, but Hawthorn were not at their best down there at all. Got poleaxed by Melbourne in the first half. These are un-Hawthorn-like Tasmania performances. One against the decent side and one against the side that has been going really badly. That says to me that maybe it's just getting a little hard, and, when you know the end's coming and you check out, like, hey, when you get your hand your notice in at work in a couple of weeks, those last 2 weeks aren't your most productive. I'm just saying that maybe maybe that we just shelf all of that and just play all of our footy in Melbourne, and then you're only travelling outside of like the 4 times or 5 times like everyone else is, and it's a really good result. So that's the thing for me, Harro. And then speaking of Melbourne, maybe we're going to have more of those games at Marvel, because my last out is the MCG AFL members. I've said this before. It's actually shit house. The MCC do not look after the Southern Stand at all. And they run the joint. The AFL doesn't run the joint, right? They run Marvel. They don't run the MCG. I went there. I know it's a low crowd game. The only bar, they've only got one bar in the AFL members now, Harro, that's on the concourse on level 1. They'd have a bar upstairs, and they got a downstairs, like you can walk in an actual bar, like a pub bar. They shut the actual place where you go and get drinks. Most of the food places are shut as well. There's like 1 or 2 open. Here's the funny thing though about this, Harro. The bar they shut is one of these AI automated bars where you scan your card, you go in, you self-serve, and you walk out with the drinks. So it's the only bar in the place that doesn't require a heap of staff, and that's the one they decide to fucking shut. Explain that to me. Not the bar downstairs where you need all the people. We'll shut the bar where you literally only need one person on the end just to go, are the cans open? Are the cans open? And I'll tell you what else, Harro. You don't need to check if the can's open, because you know what no one is doing? Nobody is going into the MCG and paying $14 for a beer to go and take it outside of the stadium, because every other place you can buy a beer in Melbourne is cheaper than inside the MCG. So you don't even need to check. So you could operate this bar without any humans and save on staffing costs and make it easy for all of us. But instead, you don't. Dickheads. Anyway, that's my rant, Harro. Like,
that's a rant. That is
do you know what else I did enjoy though? We went there because it was Richmond West Coast. I went with the family. We just go, hey, we're just going to go. Jack's godfather's Richmond. Him and his dad. We're going, okay, let's go. It's a nice day. We'll have a couple of MCG beers if you can find them. And we got there, and Jack's like, oh, can I get like? He goes, oh, I didn't bring a hat or something. And I'm like, mate, we're at a Richmond West Coast game, mate. They're not going to sell Hawks merch. And he goes, can we go and check? So we go to the merch store. It's not like the MCG store. So it's not the shop it's the merch store. Like they sell the 2 teams merch on the day. Yeah. Mate, 4 Hawthorn hats, 4 beanies, a scarf, all this Melbourne stuff. It was like every other team. And then a couple of Richmond and West Coast things, which I did find funny. But anyway, a good day out at the Jihad, even though I had to like do my own like trek to go and find a couple of Asahi tins. But, mate, all good. All right. Shall we get into it?
Are you all right, mate? Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm good. I just feel like because the MCC run the MCG, Harro, they just forget about the general public a fair bit. And their side, their members area is beautiful and it's great and it's amazing. But then the rest of the G you go to, and it's still Ponsford's pretty good, but the whole Shane Warne stand needs and deserves an upgrade. The minute they put that great man's name on it, they need to upgrade it. That needs an upgrade. And if you're AFL members, it's not cheap. You pay as much for AFL membership as you do for MCC, and you don't get it all year round. You're only getting it for the AFL season. So at what point do you actually get looked after? That's my only point, Harro.
Well, if they're going to name it after Shane Warne, you should be able to have a dart while you're sitting there watching the footy.
Absolutely, you should. Full strength 24/7. Do you know what else, Harry? I will say this. Do you know what I just realised? And in the Southern Stand, no dimmies at the food outlets. Is that weird?
Mate, I rarely get anywhere near the footy unless it's grand final day. That's about the only time I ever go. So I'm probably not the expert on all this stuff, to be honest.
But, I mean, you should be able to get dimmies at the footy.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Cup of dimmy, cup of 3 dimmies. Come on, steamed or fried. By his choice. Anyway, let's get stuck into the footy because apparently that's why we're here, Harro. Before we do, if you haven't checked out our Discord, the information's on our Insta. It's pinned to the top of our X/Twitter. Check it out. A lot of cool stuff goes on there. Heaps more information. We do a Friday morning pod, which goes out on Friday, which is like the update following teams and things like that. So it's a good experience. Go check it out. as we come towards the end of the season. And I'll tell you what now, Harry, we're already planning some stuff for next year. It's going to be absolutely huge. And also, if you're watching it on YouTube, make sure you're subscribing so you get the notifications. Obviously, it helps us out. Like and share. All right, let's get into this. Western Bulldogs, North Melbourne, Thursday night. The Dogs are $1.37. North Melbourne's $3.12. The line is 17.5 points here. I watched North up close, Harrow. I had to take my Hawks hat off and ask a couple of neutral mates. And they were like, it was actually a decent, it wasn't shocking. It was a decent game. North were actually okay. And that was my thinking. And yeah, I kind of don't know whether either of these teams are at. I just think the Western Bulldogs now have more to play for.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the ladder, they don't actually have, stacks more to play for. I think the Bulldogs are kind of locked into a position around there, but I just think both teams will be trying. And like North, they were kind of dead going into the weekend's game. They still gave a pretty good account of themselves. And so I'm just going to judge this one as if it's a normal game without any real edge from a motivational point of view. And look, to be honest, mate, and I've been a little bit bearish on the Dogs with their form and a little bit bearish on North with their form as well over the last sort of 10 weeks. But I think that when you're getting a 17.5 start for one team and you don't actually see that there's a huge gap between the two, I definitely side with North Melbourne at the line here. Now, a couple of interesting ones, Wally, playing outside of that. I'm not going to play the total points. You saw on the weekend with the Bulldogs, they turned up over at Freo with a very negative game plan. It turned the game into a real scrap and a super low scoring game. And so that's just kind of put me off, because if they bring that against North, well, the game will go really low. If they don't, then it's going to make up somewhere around the line. So I'm just going to stay out of that one. But player bets wise, mate, there's a few here that sort of that I'm happy to have a look at. Now, and I know we've been playing Jai Simpkin for the last month, and he's been very good to us. He's beaten his line the last month. Now, I hear that Wardlaw's coming back. So that would change my tune on a Jai Simpkin at that 23.5. I'd be looking to go under that as long as Wardlaw's named, because he'll probably go back out to more of an outside role. And when he was getting that outside role, he didn't get over 23 without having, those centre bounces in there to help him out. So that's probably the first area I'm looking. I did notice on the weekend also that Libba, he kind of went right back into his preferred role. So he had, proper 80% plus time on ground, 60% centre bounce attendances, and he got the 28 disposals, and his line's 23.5. So I'll be looking for Libba to go back to sort of somewhere around his best. The other thing that we noticed on the weekend, Wally, and it worked out quite well for us, was that we said, North are conceding the the second lowest amount of disposals in the comp across the whole season. And we got all these Hawthorn players with quite elevated lines on the weekend, and they did keep Hawthorn a fair bit below their average, and quite a lot of their players did go under. So be a little bit careful when taking the Western Bulldogs players. Now, also, apart from that, there's a couple of maybe kind of matchups that we might be looking for. Finn O'Sullivan to the Bont would probably make good sense, wouldn't it? I would imagine. He'd be the one to target there. And so looking at playing him. Now, also with the Doggies having a few sort of main ball users missing out of their back line, we've seen Bramble in the last 2 weeks have a big bump in his disposals, and he's getting the bulk of the kickouts as well. He's had 27 and 23 the last 2 weeks, and his line's 21. So that might be a guy you want to follow. And the other guy here, I've noticed he had more of a bump against Richmond. It was Bailey Williams with 26. He went back to 19, but it was a very tough matchup against Freo. So, and he's 21.5. So I probably prefer Bramble out of those two. So looking at some role changes around North on the weekend, which I found interesting, was Sheasel, mate. He only had the the 30% centre bounce attendances, and his disposals dropped all the way down to 25, which is about the lowest he's had this year without being tagged. So not too sure if that's going to continue or not, but you just might want to be a little bit careful around Shees. Luke Parker played as a full-time inside mid and looked pretty good in there, mate. So I wonder if that's going to continue as well. Obviously, Clarko's now starting to throw some magnets around, and that can confuse things a little bit too. The other guy I noticed too, he didn't go over his line, but he looked to have his role back as a bit of a defensive ball user. He had the 36% kick-ins, which he hasn't been getting all year, and that was McKercher. He only had the 21 disposals. So, but I did notice with obviously Parker going up into the midfield, McKercher, he did have that kind of role. He just didn't get enough of the footy, and it was Hawthorn is a bit of a tough matchup for that sort of role. So he's a guy I'm going to be interested in as well, mate. So there's a few for the punters to consider, and I've got a few leans there. Hopefully we can turn into some winners, mate.
All right, very good. All right, Hawthorn head up to Brisbane, mate, and this is an interesting one because this will be one that we have a very, very close eye on selection. Because what they have at the moment, Brisbane's $1.70, Hawthorn's $2.16, the Lions $5.5. So Brisbane now, Payne's already out, Gallup's suspended, and now Leicester's gone down. The question is, will Leicester? I don't know. Like the AFL injury list he's not even putting McCluggage, Leicester, these guys, which clearly are carrying something on that injury list. They're just saying that they'll face a test. If Leicester's out, it means that Harris Andrews and Eric Hipwood will likely have to take on Joel Gunston and possibly now Mitch Lewis. So that's going to be really, really interesting. Zorko will come back in for Coleman, which is fine. That's a like for like or an upgrade because Coleman got injured again. And then there's the Hugh McCluggage piece of he's a huge out if he doesn't play. We know that. But also if he's playing and carrying something. So Hawthorn are just about back to full strength because Carl Amon, you think, would return and Mitch Lewis is likely to return. So this is more than just, Brisbane up there by, that, mate, Hipwood, Andrews is a freak, but Eric Hipwood is your second tall defender against that forward line. I'd be worried.
Yeah.
The Brisbane backer.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad,
more than I do.
It's probably not a bad idea to be getting on maybe Hawthorn before the teams are out, because obviously it could change things a fair bit in terms of who's in and who's out. And like Hawthorn looks solid. Like I don't think we're going to get any surprises on the Hawthorn side.
So that's the thing is Brisbane's news could only be outs. Hawthorn's news can only be ins. So it's a good shout. If you do like the Hawks, I'd be going early.
That's it, yeah. And I kind of do like the Hawks, mate. Do you remember the game they played up there? It was a very similar situation, wasn't it, last year? These two teams met up in Brisbane, and Brisbane gave them a bit of a touch-up, I think. So Hawthorn will have that in the back of their mind, and they'll be wanting to front up here and give a better account of themselves. Actually, it was only 10 points.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. I remember this now. We were on the Lions, I think, and they won by 0-10. Should have been a lot bigger margin. So it was 0-11, actually. No. Yeah. That's funny. They've got the margin as 10 points on final siren, but they've got the score as 8-19 to 8-8. So anyway, that's weird. Oh, no, sorry, that's a three-quarter time score. I'm having a man.
Flying Harro. But yeah, that was that game. Then they kicked a ridiculous amount of behinds.
Yeah, it was 11-23 to 11-13. So incredible. Now, obviously, we talked about it last week in the Blues game, and it's that I said last week it's about the strongest trend in betting and footy at the moment is the over total points in in Brisbane Lions games, and we saw it again on the weekend in the Blues v Lions. And look, if the Lions aren't going to change anything off the back of getting a hammering against the Blues, which they could do, they could think, mate, well, we've just conceded 150 points. We need to change something. But if they don't, and you've kind of got to back these trends until you get a reason not to. And that's exactly what I said last week. And I think the line here is around that 185.5. So I said last week that the Lions have, it's now the 13 of their last 14 games are over 180. And Hawthorn are a free scoring side too. So you just have to keep playing that sort of thing until you get a reason not to, basically. So like the Hawks, I think that they can turn around that deficit they had with the Lions last year. I think the Hawks are better now than what they were last year. Agree with that, Wally?
Yeah, 100% we are.
Yeah.
There's no
and
doubt.
The Lions, I don't think the Lions are going better, especially with their outs they've got. Then you look at some player stuff. Now, I saw Dunkley did a fantastic job on Cripper on the weekend, kept Cripper very quiet. And there's just a pretty obvious matchup for him, I think, in the Hawthorn side, and that's John Newcomb. And if you have a look back over the last sort of 3 games he's played against the Lions, Newcomb, he's been under this line on all 3 occasions. In fact, each time he's had exactly 23 disposals and the line's 25.5. So you could definitely look to play the Newcomb unders on this occasion, mate. I'd be pretty happy with that. The other guy that goes that should go all right here, and if Hawthorn give up disposals anywhere, it's the inside mids, and so Lockie Neal, I think, is looking to have I think he's got a good matchup here, and his line's not so high at 27.5, which is a bit down for him. So he's another guy I'd be happy to have a look at in this one, Wally. Outside of that, I think we've sort of come up with enough for this game.
All right, very good. Well, looking forward to that one. Be a good game. That's a cracking game for neutrals. That's what you want as a neutral supporter on a Friday night. Absolutely. 2 teams vying for top 4, back-to-back reigning premiers against a team that's like youth and coming up. Like that is what Friday night footy is meant to be at this time of year, Harro. So I'm wrapped for the neutrals. And another game on the sorry,
we've got the number 2 in the comp scoring side playing the number 3 in the comp scoring side. So there should be plenty of scoring, which equals entertaining footy.
Order a couple of pizzas, open a bottle of red, have a couple of beers in the fridge, and just enjoy your Friday night. Watch the presses, mate. I'll tell you what, mate. That is if you can't enjoy yourself on Friday night, you don't like footy or fun or anything. Saturday gets us off to a good start too. MCG, Melbourne Freo. Now this is a really interesting game. This one, Melbourne Freo, Melbourne 274. A day game at the G is about as big as they've been since early in the season. Freo's $1.46. The line's 13.5. Mate, this is great stuff because the D's these are 2 of the more fun, exciting teams to watch. Freo obviously have to be exciting to watch because they're so bloody good, but Melbourne been incredible this year. This is a great game.
It is a good one. And I think, Fremantle will probably look at this and go, this is like a dress rehearsal maybe for what might be coming later in terms of they don't get that many opportunities to play on the MCG. So I kind of expect Freo to be taking this one seriously. But I just can't back a team that's 3 games clear with 3 games to go. It's just tricky from a motivational point of view. But I wanted to go through why Freo is so good. And I'm looking at their defensive sort of profile, and they concede the least disposals in the AFL, which obviously means they concede the least uncontested possessions. They also concede the least meters gained as well. They concede the least intercepts. They concede the least clearances. They concede the least inside 50s. No matter where you look, they concede the least points. They concede just everywhere you look, mate. It's just red. It's a red screen. And And it does make for tricky betting opportunities, actually, when you're looking for like disposal bets and stuff like that. But that just gives you a bit of an idea like of where Freo are going really well. And then you look at the flip side. Not only are they conceding the least points in the AFL, but they're actually scoring the fourth most. And you think about how inaccurate they've been this season as well. Like that could easily be, higher, I reckon, as well. So they're just crushing it, Freo, and they've been really good to watch. So how does this one work out? I reckon this is a really tricky betting game because obviously the D's are highly motivated. Freo's motivation could be questioned a bit, but you think they're coming to the G as a dress rehearsal. They'd probably go flat stick, but and also the D's form, I reckon's tailed off a little bit. Like they should have lost to the Gold Coast, unexpected scoring on the weekend. They're missing DJ Turner so badly because you look at what's happened to the D's since he's gone out of the side, and the amount of points that they've conceded compared to before. Like, okay, so they conceded 117 against Geelong and 105 against the Gold Coast. And then with DJ Turner in the side, they're only conceding like 76, 65, 90 against Hawthorn, who are a really high-scoring team, and like 79 against Adelaide. So their last month before DJ Turner went out of the side, it was all like conceding low. And then he goes out. It's amazing what difference it's made because they've given up 117 and 105. So, love to see him back in. But otherwise, mate, we're looking at this one as a pretty tricky betting event, from my opinion. I'll just give you a couple of players that we could sort of watch out for in this one, and so it's actually very very tough. There's wingers against the D's tend to do pretty well. And so like your Matthew Johnson could be a good one. He's gone back out onto a wing now. And so his line's dropped a fair bit. So he could be one to watch out for. Then you've got key defenders is a funny one against Melbourne. So they actually give up high numbers to key defenders and those defender ball users as well. So you could look at those guys for free. The other thing that they do really well, Melbourne, is they guard those high half forwards really well. And we saw that with Petrarca. The week before it was Myers. And Wally, who's the obvious guy for Freo? If they're going to be like guarding a Petrarca and a Myers, there's a guy there for Freo that just stands out that you'd go after, isn't there? Can you pick
Petrarca and Myers?
Yeah. So Tholstrup's done a job on those two the last 2 weeks. And I think it's Murphy Reid. Reid for Freo. So I'm looking for Murphy Reid to get the attention from Tholstrup this week. And if we can get a line for him around like that 22, 20, at the moment it's 22.5. And he's going at about 50-50 at that line throughout the season anyway. And I'm pretty sure Tholstrup will go there. So that's there's an unders play for the punters as well.
Nice, mate. All right, great. Just getting all that down. So we're saying Johnson over, Melbourne key defenders possibly over if you have a look there. And if you can get with those, they're the ones that you can get, like they help with your SGMs. You can get them at a 10 or a 15. And then Reid is an under. Look, that's just a game that could be a belting game, Harro. That just could be a cracker. I can't wait for that to kick off the Saturday. We move on now. That's where the great games on Saturday stop. I'll just tell you now, Harro, I'm sorry. Sydney, Port Adelaide at the SCG. Sydney's $1.13, Port $6.05. The line's 37.5. I think Port, I've actually been really impressed what they've been able to do this year with the injuries and the list and a new coach and all of that. And they've been so close in so many games. And halfway through the season, they were like top 4 on expected scoring and all of those things that kind of don't matter when the end of the season like comes to rest. But I think now they're finally just like done. And the last 3 weeks could be a long 3 weeks for them. And Sydney, all Sydney need to do is just, they can't get overtaken. They just got 3 games. It doesn't matter what happens. They just need to win all 3. They win all 3. They get a home final, and happy as Larry, and the whole season has done everything it needs to set up for a big finals campaign. So you can't, there'd be no surprises there. But is there an angle in that line at all, Harro?
Well, I watched obviously the Port team pretty closely on the weekend. I was pretty disappointed actually with the way they played. They just didn't play well at all. And so I reckon you're onto something there with them. And you see this with bottom teams tailing away as the season goes on. Especially now in an away game. I feel like the Swannies. I feel like the minimum they could win by would be around this line, but they've got the ability to put on a score too, don't they? So I
Yeah.
definitely favour the Swannies at the line. Now, a few things I like here. Heaney has been really closely guarded the last 2 weeks against the Giants. He had Angwin, and against the Saints, they ran a couple of different players around with him, but kept him quiet. And his line's now down to 27.5 at home against a team that I don't think they've got the right type of player. Or, also they're probably just focusing on their own game a fair bit at the moment. Port, I think that Heaney over's looking good. Now, I also feel like there's a very obvious player for James Jordan to lock onto this week, and it's Jason Horne-Francis. And so if we're hopefully getting a line for him around that 23, 24, which is, likely, then I'll be pretty keen to get under his line as well. Then you get Errol Goulden, mate, and he's been back for a month now, and he seems like he's right back into full form. And he's also now doing some kind of piggish sort of things like running down and taking kickouts and giving the ball to a guy who he knows he's going to get it back off. Stuff I don't love. And I'll call it out, whether it's Naz or Dacos or Goulden, but it does make for a good kind of betting opportunity, doesn't it? So him to get 30, mate. He's $2 to get 30. He's coming off 30, 22, 41, and 34. And I think now Port are no longer like a really stingy outfit. They're giving up, enough possessions at the moment. So they're my leans in this game from a disposal point of view. Otherwise, I do like, as with yourself, does feel like Port are tailing off, and they do have plenty of players out too. So I'm kind of keen for Sydney to get on top here, and there could be, a bit of a margin in this one.
All right, very good. Next game, mates. We have Geelong Essendon. This is about as big as you will get in terms of a price. Geelong's $1.01, Essendon's $19. You don't see many with a 2 in front of them, so that's about as big as you get. The line's 64.5. I mean, like percentage helps Geelong too, because they're right on there. They've got they're even. So I was having a look at this, Harro, just to be clear on this. In terms of their percentage, Geelong are on 117, Brisbane's on 114, and Adelaide's on 117. So if Adelaide drop a game, like Geelong's obviously going to want to have a higher percentage, and then the Brisbane factor. So they're competing with 2 other teams for that top 4 spot who have a similar percentage. So what does that usually mean?
Yeah. Well, I would never normally tip up these, 10-goal lines, but I feel like this is a bit of a unique opportunity in terms of exactly what you pointed out, Wally, and the Geelong, they'll definitely be looking to try and chase percentage here. And so even if, Essendon are really competitive and the margin's like, say 30 points at 3/4 time, your line is still in play because you feel like Geelong are going to push all the way to the finish line and try and eke out every little bit of percentage they can. So it's in their interest to play that way. And so from a motivational point of view, that's kind of where you want to be. And then you just look at it from a form point of view. I've really been impressed with Geelong's form, especially with a couple of players out. They've kind of been able to maintain. I thought the margin kind of flattered Collingwood last week. That the free kick count was so lopsided that I felt like the Cats had, a high ascendancy in that game. Anyway, Before that, also, the Cats had a pretty strong performance. I think it was against the D's. Then you look at it, they're actually at home with a big home ground advantage as well. And then Essendon, just let me bring up their form. So obviously they had was it a 63 point, something like that, loss on the weekend? Sorry, 72-point loss to Adelaide. And Adelaide are not going as well as Geelong, in my opinion, and they don't have the big home ground advantage. And the game before that, a 93-point loss to the Hawks, who were potentially around about Geelong's level. 2 weeks before that, a 90-point loss to the Brisbane Lions, and a week before that, a 67-point loss to the Saints. So you're looking at 4 of the last 5 games that Essendon have played. They've been all over where, the margin's been over where the line is here. Geelong, with everything to play for down at home, it should just look like a little bit more like that Hawthorn game or that Brisbane Lions game, or even last week against the Crows. So that's where I want to be in this one. I think it's not a bad bet. Wouldn't normally tip up these 65-point lines, but you need motivation. You need motivation guaranteed when you're tipping up these sorts of lines, and I feel like we're going to get it there. So it kind of, when you get these types of games, it could be a bit of a disposal festival for the Cats. So nobody's really off limits there in terms of like who you could back. I know wingers go really well against Essendon. Ollie Dempsey's in great form, coming off 29. His line's 21.5. He's beaten that in 4 of his last 5 games, regardless, not even considering the opposition. So he's definitely a guy I'd be happy to back. There's a Bombers player here. If you're a Bombers fan, you want to have a bet on one of your guys. I've been so impressed with this guy, Dyson Sharp. He's he's playing about a 50% midfield role, so he's around the footy. He goes and gets dirty, and he finds the footy. He's got 23, 21, and 22. So it doesn't matter if his team's getting smashed, he's still getting a bit of the footy. His line's 18.5. Looking outside of that, so obviously goal kickers for Geelong, they're going to kick plenty, but it's obviously the tricky part's finding the value as well, because it's just their prices are pretty tricky to get around. So we can look more into that. Yeah, go
on
ahead.
the goal kickers, Ollie Dempsey's having one of the great years for a winger. I think the most goals in a season for a winger. I think he's 2 of the 4 most goals we've seen, and he's going really well. He's kicked a heap. He's gone 2-3-2-0-2, and we think if they go well against Essendon, he's $2 for 2. He's $4.40 for 3. So that might be a starting point. The two, he's done it 4 or 5 weeks, and he's getting a great matchup against Essendon in the game. They think they're going to pile on for even money. That feels like a good one for me for Dempsey. The other one for me that I'll be playing in is I just feel like the sort of game that Sean Manor could tear apart.
Yeah, it does.
Just because he's just mate. I just love Sean Manor. Let's be honest. But the thing is that
there's a guy there that we backed last week as well, Jay Polkinghorn, and I knocked his kicking. Actually, I said when I tipped him up last week, I said he might need 5 shots on goal to get 2. But he kicked 3 straight. So
nice one from the boundary too, Harro.
Yeah.
See, now he's even money for 3, so he's been found now. So I don't know about you. I'd rather go Dempsey. He's done it 4 of the last 5 weeks. A good matchup against Essendon. I'm getting the same price for him to kick 2 as I am for Polkinghorn to kick 3. I think that Shannon Neal could also have a day out.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
but he is $2.40 for 4, so his price is completely gone. Anyway, a lot of angles there. Should be a good night down there for Cats supporters.
Wally,
go to Chin Chin for a meal in the Joel Selwood stand, and then go and watch your team win by 100.
Actually, you mentioned Manor, and he's actually $2.10 to kick 2. So, he's definitely capable of kicking a bag as well. If you think he can kick 4, which he's done 3 times this year already, is $12. So I think Manor might be the guy there with that's actually not bad value as well.
All right, love it. All right, we'll continue with the Saturday games, and Saturday night doesn't get any better in terms of matchups. Adelaide at $1.02, hosting Richmond at $17. The line's 55.5. Adelaide had the tune up after the loss against Essendon, bounced back. They need percentage. They're at home and they're playing Richmond, who's just had their win. And like, this is going to be carnage again. I think this matches up in a similar fashion. 55.5 line. Yeah.
Yeah. It actually, it does. And you could do a bit of a double
Yep.
with the two smashings, just based like there's a bit of a correlation there, isn't there? With these two teams are both fighting one another basically for percentage, and they both play one after another. You can imagine the Crows sitting there watching the Cats win by 100 or something like that, going, "Shit, we got to pull something out similar here." So.
Harro, I'm just going to stop you there. You know how players often talk about and coaches, we just got our own eyes. John Newcombe let it slip. He goes, yeah, we saw that St Kilda were up on Sydney and we knew like coming in, like, you know, this was a real opportunity. We had to make sure this was our great opportunity. Unfortunately, they didn't get the job done. They were checking at halftime, mate.
Yeah.
So these players are across it. They can pretend in the media that they're not looking at all the other games and what it means for them in their ladder position. But I saw that they let that slip in an interview. I'm like, you guys were checking during a game, not before. You're checking halftime. So you're 100% right. They will know exactly what Geelong have done when they go onto the field and what they need to do to stay ahead.
Do they still put the other game scores up on the scoreboard at the games, Wally?
I don't think so. The old A, B, C, D, E, F, that was the best. And then just, by the way, in great business by the AFL that you just go, we're not going to put the names of the team. We're just going to put a letter because there's like 5 games going on at once on a Saturday. You have to buy the record to work out which team is which letter. It was actually ahead of its time. It was brilliant. No, but Adelaide are going to know, mate. The player, they know. The coaches, the players, the teams, they all know.
Yeah.
So they're going to go into this. Geelong's probably going to smash this and go, fuck. All right, well, guys, we need percentage.
Yeah, yeah. So I like that. And yeah, and you could do a little, I know it's going to be like a little double of like both teams to win by 90 or something like that. I think there's some play around that. Yeah, it'll be long odds. So, you know, it's something for a small stake, but I could definitely see it happening. Now, there's an interesting one here. Obviously, we saw, and we were on him actually, the boy from West Coast, the new guy. He had like 34 disposals playing as a halfback. I don't know why his name's just slipped me, but I'll look it up just so we can be spot on with this, Wally. But and the thing that what I'm finding here is the defensive ball users for Adelaide, they're actually missing is like Millera and what's his name, Laird. So I think there's a bit of an opportunity. The guy I'm talking about is Herbert, who had 34.
Yep.
Yeah, and we actually tipped him up at about $6, didn't we, to have 30. So that was probably our best player bet we had for the weekend. But so who's that going to be for Adelaide this week? Look,
Worrell?
Obviously Worrell, he's down there. He didn't have a great game on the weekend, and obviously
he's gone missing a bit in the back half of the season, Harro.
What's
I know he's gone missing a little bit in the back half of the season in games, so he gets a bit of it, and then there's a drop off. Like, yeah, I don't have a huge amount of confidence in him.
Yeah, and they haven't like been moving the ball through him directly either. But just looking at the kickouts, they're really kind of sharing them around. Keane actually had the bulk of them on the weekend. So you could look at his disposals as well, because he's getting the kick-ins. Let's have a look at him now while we're just on this. The other guy's Hugo Hall-Khan.
Yep.
But his line's like he needs 22 and he hasn't got there these last 5 weeks. So this needs a bit of work, but there will be a defensive ball user or whatnot for Adelaide who should go really well here against Richmond, who give up, as we saw against West Coast, they give up to tons to that position. So we're just going to obviously have to wait for teams and figure out who it is. I know we back Cumming against Essendon at 16.5, and he got the job done with the bare 17. So maybe he could be one that could go all right here as well. But I think we need to wait for teams. We'll pick out a guy there. But obviously, the main bet we're looking at is very similar to the Geelong game. It's Adelaide to just put a margin and build some percentage.
Yep, love that. All right, we're going to head to Sunday. We've got GWS Gold Coast, and the bookies have finally aligned with what's going on with Gold Coast. So Gold Coast against Western Bulldogs, Carlton and Melbourne haven't been bigger than $2.20. Now they're getting a team which is probably not going as well as any of them in GWS. And GWS is $1.35 and Gold Coast is $3.25. So they're finally being caught. So now if you want to keep backing them, you're finally getting a price. And the line's 18.5. Yeah. What do we think?
This is it must be raining this one, Wally, because the line's at 166.5.
You get started. I'll get the weather for us, Harro.
Yeah, because my first thought when I came to this game was actually the over total points, because both teams, like especially Gold Coast, they leak like nothing. Leak scores. So just to sort of back that up, I can tell you what they've conceded, Gold Coast, in the last sort of month: 114 to Melbourne, 110 to Carlton. Forget the Bulldogs game; it was 77. Then 128 to the Crows, 104 to Collingwood. So, but Wally, if you could fill us in on that weather, that will give us a bit of a better guide in terms of why this line is so low.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I'm just checking. It's in Canberra, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Sydney's fine, mate. So I'm just going to Canberra. So Sydney's like.
Oh yeah, Canberra's got a bit of rain, definitely.
Is that what it is? Like,
yeah. So keep an eye out for that.
Mate, okay, so Saturday it's -2 there overnight. Okay, so yeah, mate, a bit of rain is saying 90%, 10 to 20 mil.
All right.
All right. Even with the bomb and their 2% hit rate, they still might be onto it here. So that is a lot of rain, Harro.
It is, yeah. So look, and as I say with these games, like throw the form out the window because it's a completely different game. And actually, I feel like the Gold Coast are probably more acclimatized to these types of conditions because they play in those slippery type games up there a bit. And they actually played well on the weekend against the D's. So you'd have to be brave to be backing a side that's just performed the way they have over the last 2 months. But with the 18.5 start in like most likely horrible conditions, that's probably where you'd have to be. Now, outside of that, who are the types of players that we know go well in the wet? I reckon you could reel off a couple here, Wally, without me having to prompt you. But we've got a favourite.
We know. I mean, Matty Rao, we know, is built for it. Noah Anderson is the one, though, that he has actually had all that wet weather form. We know he's been great. I think that from a GWS perspective, Clayton Oliver's built for it. But Noah Anderson's the one.
Yeah, Anderson is the guy we've backed before in the wet and has killed it. So that could be that one. But they, you know what else, Wally? I could be spoiling something for us here, but we get these types of games and we get those tackle markets.
Yes, the tackle markets.
Yeah. So I hope I'm not spoiling it for us by pointing it out. But actually, no, tackles will go low in this one, Wally. But
very low. No, definitely tackle markets are a good one. That's if you can get on those pick'ems like there. That's where you can play in that space.
Yeah,
I reckon you can go under on marks too, just quietly.
probably. Yeah, I mean a lot of that's going to be pulled, but as we found with the Lloyd Meek bet going back a month or so, that you can still pick out some tidy bets, even with everybody knowing the weather's coming. So that'll be the sort of angles we'll be looking at.
Nice, mate. All right, then on Sunday we continue with West Coast Collingwood. West Coast $3.09. Collingwood's $1.38. The line's 17.5. I reckon if this was on the G, the line would be double that. But yeah, West Coast, look, they're back at home, which they enjoy. I don't know. It wasn't great footy on Sunday. They just kicked shockingly. I mean, their sort of season fate is sealed. Whereas Collingwood still have something to play for. I mean, in terms of that, Collingwood's. Do you know what the interesting thing you said earlier? Like they probably don't have a lot to play for. Like some of these teams that are in that wildcard race, because they're all Melbourne teams as well. So the bottom line is that they're probably going to play in Melbourne. The only thing is, there is still hope for a Collingwood. They're a game. No, probably not. They're a game and a half out of the 6. They're probably not making it, are they?
No. But you
So
do look at
let's go over there. Let's get the Chockies come home.
Just quickly, they finished with Hawthorn and Brisbane. Collingwood do.
Okay, so
So if they dropped this game, they could just put themselves under a little bit of pressure. With Carlton would have to win 2 games to overtake them, and St Kilda would have to win 3. So it's still very unlikely they could miss the 10.
But possible, because Carlton could lose to the Saints, win their other 2, and St Kilda could win all 3.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. So it's kind of Collingwood would want to put it to bed, wouldn't you? You wouldn't want to have to be relying on St Kilda losing the last game and having to beat Brisbane or something like that to make finals. There's also like West Coast home form is pretty good when you look at it. It is a bit of a danger game, I reckon, Wally. I mean, I think Collingwood will get the job done, but it is just a little bit of a danger game in terms of West Coast at home.
Yeah.
Nothing to lose, and Collingwood have some kind of important players missing in this one as well. So just as you say that, like it's not huge odds. Like we're not talking about Collingwood, giving a 40-point start or anything like that. It's only a 17.5 start. So I'm kind of I would love to be getting like $5 or something about West Coast because it could happen, but fair play to the bookies. They've kind of priced this one okay. Then in terms of, so we'll be looking for some player bets and who like West Coast, they're quite restrictive and obviously they use that little fella up front to try and guard some of those defensive ball users. So, like a Josh Dacos here, he might have a bit of a low one. And if you look at what happened last time they played the Eagles, he only had the 18 disposals. So that kind of tips you over the edge in terms of which way that might go in terms of the matchup. And then looking at like this, we've probably got to go back to the well and back this Herbert again because defensive ball users against the Pies is a good area to be, and he's coming off 36 and 34, and his line's 26.5. He looks like he's just getting a full run at it now. So he's a guy that I'd be pretty happy to support. And then looking outside of him, Harley Reid, he's just a guy I was so impressed with in the weekend. And obviously they do probably have, actually now I think of it, they've got the tag, don't they, Collingwood? That's definitely where that's going to go. So maybe he's one to avoid this week, even though he's in great form, with Ed Allen. Actually, Ed Allen's probably a great matchup for him too. So, you could either play – you could probably play Reid under 23.5 because he's been under 24 more often this season than what he's been over. And actually, when he played the Pies last time, he had just the bare 20. So I think there's a couple of nice unders bets there for us.
Yeah.
And a nice overs bet. I wish we were getting a bigger price on West Coast because it wouldn't shock me if they at least beat the line. But with Collingwood having a few important outs, West Coast back at home, you kind of just never know. So, it'd be funny though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. All right. Last game of the round is St Kilda Carlton. And it's sort of like your wild card game. This is the game to sort of put you in the box seat to be able to get your wild card spot. I'll tell you what, mate, this is St Kilda's 2.18. Baggers are the favourites at $1.69. The line 6.5. St Kilda, there's a lot of injury. The selection of this one's going to be really interesting where it all lands. But we saw after the weekend, St Kilda's got some real injury problems. And the Baggers are going as well as they have gone in a very, very long time. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds, mate.
So who are they actually going to be missing this week? Let's figure that out first, because I've been looking and I haven't been able to find any.
Okay, so we know that like Flanders and King are out. Jack Silvani's out. Jack Sinclair's out for season. Cooper Sharman is the other one that's facing a test this week. Then the only thing is, wasn't there a little bit around TDK?
Yeah, he was sore as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. So the way I was looking is that if you've got Silvani's gone, he will be out. Even though, didn't he? What happened? He went back in.
He dislocated his shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he's going to be. I know it's the shoulder. So Silvani's going to miss. Cooper Sharman is a test. And then there's the TDK chart. So I just want to see what happens there. You don't know. I think that with so much on the line, TDK will play if he's any chance. The others, they're sort of going around without, whereas the baggers are looking fantastic, mate.
Yeah. Well, this game, Wally, I think they played each other back already in round, what was it? Probably round 8, I think it was. And this was Carlton's worst performance for the season. And you see it a little bit, and I pointed it out. There was a game going back a few weeks ago, and I pointed out, like, it's a sort of game you would put up on your whiteboard, say, we've got this game in a month's time, and we're going to make good on the performance we had last time. And actually, Carlton started underdogs in this, so there's been a big move for the Blues, because it's gone from Carlton +5.5 to Carlton -6.5. And I just feel like the Carlton and Fags kind of pointed it out, that like if you just look at since Fraser took over, their form is like, it's quite strong. And where the Saints have run into a couple of little issues now. And so I think that Carlton are likely to flip the script on the last time they played. They're playing with great confidence. And yeah, so I'm happy to tip up the Blues, mate, -6.5. I think that they'll get it done. I hope that I'm not wearing my Blues hat when I'm talking about that. I'm just kind of trying to look at the form and put it all together. And I feel like the Blues are definitely, like, they've got better availability. They're playing better footy. Both teams should be fully wound up for it, and should be, obviously. I think whether Brisbane Hawks' game of the round or Blues Saints game of the round, it's going to be an absolute beauty, mate. So really looking forward to it. Now, Carlton, both sides have become like really high disposal since like maybe the last 6 or so weeks. But Carlton are quite restrictive. So it's going to be interesting to work out how that all goes. And geez, just looking at it, like, since they're like, the midfielders for Carlton have been going really well, but like, that's the area of the ground that St Kilda really try and restrict. So it's who's going to get the footy outside of there. Now, one guy I was really impressed with on the weekend, and he played as a bit of a defensive ball user, and that's a really good spot to be playing against the Saints, and it's Adam Chera. He had the 21 against the Lions in this kind of new role, which he's got with Newman being out. I thought he looked great, and his line's 20.5 here against a team that it should actually line up pretty well for him. There's another guy here who we've been backing really successfully. It's Max Hall. He beat his line again on the weekend. He had 23 against the Swannies, and he hasn't been below 19 since he made this midfield move, and you're getting a line just two above that, 21.5. He's beaten that line in 9 of his last 13 games, and there was one in there that he went under. He actually got a bit of an injury in the run of the game, so that one could look even better. Ollie Florent had 30 against the Saints last time they played. His line's 21.5, and he's gone 24, 25, and 26 the last 3 weeks. Another one of these guys who I think, if we're going to be avoiding the Carlton midfielders a little bit, it's these other guys who are probably going to be the ones who benefit. So I feel like there's a few nice disposal bets there for us, Wally, in this one. And otherwise, yeah, I'll be cheering on the Blue Baggers, mate, in what should be an absolute belter.
Yeah, that's an absolute great. That is perfect, because you've got Chera, Hawthorn all over. So what you can do is you can have 2 there. You can have an excuse me, Harro. You can have your SGM with all of them to have 20, and then you can have your SGM for all to cover the line at the bigger price. Doesn't get easier than that. You don't have to think about it. All you need to do on Sunday night is put on your SGM and watch what should be a great game of footy. I can't wait for that. I'm really excited about it, Harro. I reckon it's going to be a cracker.
Yeah, I got another, actually, just looking at this now. If Carlton have been doing a really good job of defending these intercept markers. I think they use McGovern as a bit of a defensive forward, and like I've seen them shut down Aliir, Harris Andrews, and so Cal Wilkie, mate, his line's 22.5. He did get 22 against the Blues last time, but I do feel like that was the Blues' worst performance for the season. So he's another guy that you could look for on the unders. This will be a pretty tactical game, like with Ross especially being involved, and even Fraser. He's sort of tended to be fairly tactical with the way he does stuff. So, but otherwise, mate, yeah, really looking forward to this one, and I think we've got enough on the slate there.
I think, yeah, you're almost being modest saying the Blues form's been all right since Fraser took over. They're 9-2.
Yeah, there's a few holes.
They beat Geelong and then they beat Brisbane by 12 goals. The only two teams they've lost to are a top 4 side in Hawthorn and Collingwood, it's Collingwood. So, mate, you start beating the chest, Harro, pop the lid off and get excited because you're wildcard bound.
Well, there's a few things against it, right? So just to explain how I think about these things. And so the Carlton performance against Brisbane, it does look like such a big outlier that it's probably not a true indication of their real form. And I said the exact same thing when Collingwood beat Adelaide in such a strong performance. It was an outlier performance in their form. And so I think Carlton's performance against Brisbane, it's great, don't get me wrong, but it's so far outside of the bounds of everything else that you don't want to take it as indicative of what they're going to do the following week. And we saw Collingwood couldn't back it up the next week because the week before wasn't a true reflection of where they're really at. So there's that. But I feel like with the Saints with a couple of bad injuries and Carlton looking to get a bit of redemption, I'm happy to be with the Blues, mate.
Very good. All right, Harro, before we go, mate, your best bet of the round.
Well, I'm going to double down on what I just said. And I feel like in such a big game, I feel like not only is it a bit of fun, but also I really do like the Blues. So I'm going to have the Blues -6.5 against the Saints as the bet of the round.
Fuck. I thought we were heading to Adelaide or Geelong. I thought we were going to Adelaide Oval or down to Cardinia Park for it, but we're going with the Blues. I love it. This is great. All right, Harro, have a great weekend. Good luck to your baggers. Hope everyone enjoys the footy. We've only got 3 rounds of footy left until we get into the real business end stuff. So enjoy the last few weeks for some and the ramp up for others. And we'll see you next week.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.